Are we ready to start our meeting, please? This is the May 16th, 2019 meeting of the Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. Welcome, everyone. Can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Clerk?
Director Mosby?
Here.
Patino? Toussaint?
Here.
Williams? Hart?
Here.
Hartman?
Here.
Adam.
Here.
Lavanino. Sierra.
Here.
Clark. Kasdan.
Here.
Rubalcaba. And Chair Murillo.
Here. And I see Mayor Patino.
Yes, I've
Okay.
got her on the record here.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And do we have a motion to approve our minutes of the March 21st meeting?
So moved.
That was Hartman, Hart. We need a roll call vote, correct? Okay.
Director Mosby. Patino.
Ms. Patino, can you hear us?
Aye. Thank you. Toussaint. Hart. Hartman. Adam. Sierra. Clark.
Abstain.
Kasdan. And Chair Murillo.
Aye. Okay, that passes. Would anyone like to pull an item from the administrative agenda? Or is there a motion to move that forward?
Second.
That was Hart and Hartman. Thank you. Any other discussion? We'll take a roll call vote, please.
Director Mosby. Patino. I'm sorry, we didn't catch that.
Aye.
Thank you. Toussaint.
Yes.
Hart. Hartman. Adam. Sierra. Clark. Kasdan. And Chair Murillo.
Aye. Thank you very much. That, move that forward. And Ms. Clerk, do we have public comment speaker slips? This is our public comment period, please.
Correct. I do have one speaker slip. This is Gail Herzen.
Come on up. Ms. Hunt, do you do the timer or do I? Okay. Welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Gail Herson. I'm a small family farmer in Carpinteria, and I'm speaking about the cannabis growing situation that is way out of control. Anyone who drives down Casitas Pass knows that odors are a problem, but what nobody's talking about is the dangerous fact that odors are caused by emissions. These emissions and the virus control system are both majorly under-researched emissions problems that I implore you to investigate. We do not have a viable odor abatement. The BIRES program, which apparently the county is wedded to, on the face of it sounds good because it uses essential oils, but that's deceiving. There's been no research on the effects of long-term, low-level, continuous exposure to the emissions that are created by the BIRES system. They do not identify the compounds that are created from combining their solution, which are terpenes, VOC emissions, with the emissions from the cannabis growing itself. We don't know what the resulting compound is, and we don't know what will happen when that compound interacts on a daily level with both ground level exhaust and sunlight. Multiply that by the more than, 1,900 cannabis permits that have been issued in Santa Barbara County. The county's given away licenses like candy with no regard for the cumulative daily effect of the emissions. The terpenes travel more than a mile. These VOCs already cause headaches, lung irritation, and worsen allergies and asthma. Children and those with chemical sensitivities, 15% of the population, are especially vulnerable to VOCs. I understand from the lawsuit that was filed in San Luis Obispo that the residue produced by the BIRES system lasts for 28 days, and it's emitted every single day. Is that going to be forever? We also understand that individuals who have visited the greenhouses where the BIRES solution is emitted lose their ability to smell for several days after exposure. You must look at this. What about the long-term residents like me who've made life investment in their homes who are sickened by these emissions? What happens if we can't sell because nobody wants to live smelling those odors and emissions? In light of this, it's incumbent upon you to re-examine the policies and place a moratorium on cannabis growing. Wanting to be environmentally responsible, when I treated my former home for termites with essential oils, I was sick for a number of weeks. So essential oils, while they sound really good, can have bad effects. The odors and emissions environmental impact of cannabis makes it wholly different than avocado, cherimoya, and lemons. The odors and emissions are a nuisance, and they do not find exemption under our Right to Farm Act. We need a moratorium and long-term health studies. Carbon filtration in closed-loop greenhouses could be effective if they're monitored and filters are regularly replaced, but there's not enough electricity in the grid and carpinteria to support this, yet more and more growers are allowed to grow. The growers would need to be using generators. Thank you so much.
I know, 3 minutes goes fast, doesn't it?
Sure does, thanks.
We have another speaker.
We have one more speaker, Anna Carrillo.
Welcome.
I would like to address, I'm Anna Carrillo from Carpinteria, representing Concerned Carpinterias and myself also. I would like to address our concerns in Carpinteria with odors/emissions from the widely used Bayer system that is being touted as the favored odor abatement system in Carpinteria. Though this vapor phase system has been installed in many greenhouses in Carpinteria and is being used as a poster child for other areas, we feel that it is not effective in eliminating the odors emissions. There have been continual complaints regarding odors and health issues before, since, and after installation. Many people are suffering from watery eyes, respiratory issues, nauseousness, headaches, and the quality of life here in Carpinteria has been severely disrupted from lack of effective measures in limiting the odor emissions. The high school is surrounded by greenhouses and is greatly affected. The classrooms there have to be aired out in the morning. Announcements have to be made to visiting sports teams that the students aren't smoking, vaping, and that the smell is from the neighboring greenhouses. Residents are woken up at night, and many can't open their windows and or enjoy outdoor activities. I'm going to skip that part. Byers is using CNB 100, which is made up of 4 plant oils, 2 surfactants, and water. The plant oils retain the odor of the plants, and all molecules grab the odor molecules, fall to the ground, and biodegrade over time. Dr. Laura Hopert, the inventor of this product from OMI Industries, has stated oil molecules grab the odor molecules, fall to the ground, and biodegrade over time. The masking agents let go of the odor molecules. When there is no wind, the molecules will not mix, and then the odors, VOCs from the terpenes, have not been neutralized as the system is supposed to do. There is some distance above the gutter location to the ridge vents where the odors, VOCs, are being emitted. Dr. Laura Hopert says that 90% of the product degrades in 28 days. I assume that is from one application. What is it when this is done 24/7? We don't know what's in the system. There needs to be a toxicity report. Already in 2013, the air quality in Carpinteria was measured above the national average. I assume this is due to our proximity to the freeway. At that time, our air quality index was measured at 106 when the U.S. average was 75. So currently, this must be much higher because of the VOCs being emitted from the cultivation processing of cannabis in our old dilapidated greenhouses, which even if they could be sealed up, have to vent. From a study in Denver done by William Vuzuetti, he measured the VOCs released into the air and postulated that cannabis farms in the Denver area are contributing to their air quality issues. Researchers have known for a long time that VOCs emitted by plants can contribute to smog. VOCs can mix with nitrogen oxides produced by cars and sun-produced ground level ozone, a pollutant. I urge you to be more proactive and request that you consider the VOCs being emitted from the cultivation of cannabis operations in addition to the regulation of odors from the manufacturing and retail operations. Cannabis does not have protection of right to farm, so APCD should be responsible for checking every request for a land use permit and CDP. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Carrillo. Thank you so much. We'll close public comment and move on to our next item, F, the director's report, please.
All right, good afternoon. I have 3 items to bring to your attention. First off, I'm going to start with Rule 361 and 342. I mentioned both of these rules at the most recent board meeting. We continue to work towards updates of those 2 rules that are to set lower NOx emission standards for boiler units to meet goals that are identified in our 2016 ozone plan, as well as the requirements under AB 617 for best available retrofit control technologies, BART. This is a time of replacement or newly purchased rule. So unless you're one of the 6 facilities that are captured under 617 BARC requirement, those are required within a specific time by 2023. On May 1st, our Community Advisory Council held a meeting in Solvang to receive a presentation on the modifications to these rules. The CAC took action and unanimously recommended both rules to your board for adoption. We are currently working to bring these rules to your board at your next meeting in June. On Sunday, a public notice will be issued to announce the June hearing and availability of the proposed rule. It will be included in the news press. It will also be issued via our electronic notice system to all the individuals who subscribe to our notification process. And also, notice will be provided to all boiler owners that are impacted by the proposed change. So that's coming to you shortly. The next item actually relates to something you heard about from the public comment. We issued an APCD advisory, Air Quality and Cannabis Operations, and you have a copy of that before you. We issued this advisory on April 26th, and it was also then updated on May 7th. We've been involved in the review of the cannabis ordinances at the county level as well as at the city levels, and also in the review of individual projects that are going through the CEQA process. In this advisory, we wanted to provide guidance in total rather than on a project-by-project basis, so folks will have a better understanding before they're looking at one individual project as far as the air quality impacts and where our regulatory jurisdiction applies. So within this advisory, we cover 5 key areas. The first one is the limitation on our regulatory authority to address odors from ag operations. Second, we talk about odors and air quality nuisance. Even though ag operations are outside of our regulatory authority, we do give guidance on aspects that should be considered. We also specify for things associated with the manufacturing, the role that we play once it's been harvested and moved on to the manufacturing and process phase. The use of electrical generators is also addressed in this advisory, and lastly, those operations that require a district permit. We've placed this advisory onto our website. We also sent emails to all the lead agencies, the concerned stakeholders that we've heard from, as well as project applicants or operators of this industry. So as you all know, this is a very evolving industry throughout our county. It requires a significant amount of staff time to ensure air quality aspects are considered and mitigated to the extent feasible or possible. And we currently have no reimbursement mechanism in place for the staff time in these efforts. So I just wanted to bring that all to your attention and hope that you can use that and share that when you get calls and inquiries from those that you represent. And then lastly, I wanted to introduce...
We have a question
Okay.
from Mr. Kasdan.
Thank you. I'm just curious, when does this then foretell future efforts when there's things like the district discourages certain things or something that's more, that sounds rather hortatory, you know, that we're just making a recommendation to the public as opposed to we authorize, prohibit, or we provide incentives, or, you know, we're doing something affirmative to steer someone towards a particular outcome one way or the other. Is that then sort of, this is my curiosity, next steps then, rather than just we discourage, that we will either provide some sort of more forceful or material motivation?
Primary emphasis of the advisory, where we emphasize our recommendations and not anything related to our regulatory ability, pertains to limitations in the California Health and Safety Code that prohibit air districts from regulating agricultural operations. So we will not be weighing in and mandating one way or another as it currently lies with cannabis operations and the growing of cannabis.
Okay, but are there other entities that are able to provide incentives one way or the other? Let's say if we can't regulate it, we can incentivize, you know, give for certain types of generators, we provide material, some sort of cost share or something like that?
Incentives are an option, definitely, and something that your board could consider. We do have incentives now for ag equipment, tractors, trying to clean up old dirty diesels and bringing in cleaner technologies. We've also done that with ag pumps, water pumps, for example. So that's something that we could consider. As far as generators, are you talking to electrical distribution or?
It wasn't, I just was observing with your number 4, the distributed electrical generators, it just says the district discourages, and that it's not, if I'm an operator, that's interesting to know. That,
okay.
But it's not really going to have a big impact on my decision making,
Okay.
I would think.
On that aspect, currently as the county ordinance is structured, they are not allowed to operate distributed generators, prime electrical generators for cannabis operations. That would require a change in the county ordinance. And if that change was to occur, they would then need to be in compliance with the state distribution generation regulation, which is extremely stringent. We're talking fuel cell technologies, right? Which is extremely costly. So unless the county ordinance changes and then we'd be considering distributed generation, then it would be brought back to our board for consideration.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Oh, yes, please.
So there was a request for us to change our ordinance, and the board turned it down. So that the prohibition at this time stands on distributed generators. So, not that there's a whole lot of ag land that's not in the county, but there are some zoned ag parcels in some of the cities. So depending on your ordinances, you could always do a similar situation.
Okay. The
All
Board
right.
of Supervisors.
Right.
Okay.
And, I will also note that previous to the land use ordinance, the APCD was consulted for any advice they have for the land use ordinance.
Thank you. Someone on this side? Was
Thank
it Ms.
you.
Hartman?
Well, I just had questions about the VOC and the information brought to us by Anna Carrillo. I mean, are we in non-attainment? I mean, would this contribute to non-attainment for ozone?
We are transitional non-attainment for ozone currently. We're getting very close to being in attainment, but we're not quite there yet. As far as the ozone impacts and what we assess, we do assess biological sources. However, in our ozone planning, that goes beyond our ability to regulate. So we focus on those ozone precursors that are within our jurisdiction to regulate. One thing to note as it relates to cannabis operations and the VOC emissions down in the Carpinteria area, we do have the Paradise Monitoring Station, which is an excellent location for assessing ozone impacts from South County sources. It is a regional pollutant, but if we were to see an increase in ozone from this activity, the Paradise monitoring site would be a good indicator for increased levels, and to date, we have not yet seen that.
Thank you. And you have one more item on your report?
Well, and I would also just indicate that according to CARB, the largest, after vehicles, the largest contributor, as we've discussed here before, is two-stroke lawnmowers and leaf blowers. So, if this board wants to venture into trying to knock down ozone counts, I'm willing to venture as far as we're allowed to in VOC regs, but it would make no logical sense to tackle only marijuana when there's a larger source that is also within our control, which is the use of gas-powered leaf blowers and two-stroke lawnmowers.
Thanks for that information. Good.
All right. And so lastly, I wanted to introduce a new staff here at the district. Gerardo, if you could please stand up. I'm excited to announce new employee Gerardo de Los Santos. He's joined the Administrative Division's fiscal team as an accounting technician. Gerardo is a self-motivated, hardworking individual who grew up in Van Nuys, California, in the San Fernando Valley. One valley over, I apologize. He earned a BA in Business Economics and a minor in Spanish from UC Santa Barbara. He later returned to UCSB to complete a professional accounting certificate program. Before joining the Air District, Gerardo worked for Verizon for 8 years and also for UCSB for 4 years. So please join me in welcoming Gerardo. That concludes my director's report.
Okay, thanks so much. Welcome to the new staff member. That moves us to item G1, overview of voluntary clean air grant and incentive programs.
All right. Jim Fredrickson, the supervisor in our planning division, will be providing the presentation for you. This is something we want to do on an annual basis, summarizing all of the various voluntary emission reduction projects that we have. We come to your board regularly when we have specific funds, but we wanted to group all of those funds into one presentation every year. So this is our snapshot of all the work we've been doing for the last 12 months.
Mr.
Thank you, Erin.
Fredrickson, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, board members. Today I'll give you an update on our Clean Air Grant and incentive programs. Before I begin my presentation, I did want to acknowledge that it is a team effort to administer and implement these programs. And actually 1/3 of the district staff is involved with these to get it done. So I personally wanted to thank those who dedicated their time this fiscal year. I have Aaron and Sarah in front of me. I have Molly, Liz, and Tina behind me. Back at the office, there's staff. There's Rachel, Mike, Tim, Alex, Emily, and Desmond. So it's a big group. I appreciate all their help. All right, I'm going to start with a couple background slides before discussing the programs in detail. It should help some of the newer board members with the material. The district started our grants and incentive programs back in 1988, and since then we've partnered with several hundred businesses and government agencies and invested $37 million of state and local funds into emission reduction projects. In general, the funding of these projects are evenly split between the district's grants and the cost share from the grantees. The advancement of cleaner technologies with our Clean Air grants has led to significant voluntary emission reductions, especially for mobile sources, which are beyond our regulatory authority. There are three primary sources of funding that we've used for our grant and incentive programs. The local mitigation funds in blue were collected from businesses that were required to mitigate their excess emissions, and mostly expended during the first decade of the program from the late 80s to the late 90s. From the late 90s to the present, we have primarily been relying on the other two major pie slices. The Department of Motor Vehicle revenue in green are derived from registration fees. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB funds, in orange include Carl Moyer, Community Air Protection, Farmer, School Bus, and Wood Smoke Reduction. These funds are derived from smog check and new tire purchase fees, California climate investments, and other fees. Here are the 8 grant and incentive programs that we've implemented this fiscal year, and I'll briefly describe them over the next several slides. This is a summary of 8 programs and projects funded this year. After 3/4 of the fiscal year, there have been over $2.5 million in program expenditures and almost $350,000 in administrative costs. This table is similar to Table 2 on page 7 of your board letter. Carl Moyer is one of our longest running programs, and we implement an average of 8 projects per year and an average of 75 tons of emission reductions per year. This fiscal year, we executed grant agreements to fund 1 tractor replacement in Solvang, 4 tractor replacements, and a construction loader replacement in Santa Maria, and a marine engine repower in Santa Barbara. We will receive an additional $100,000 from CARB in year 21 Moyer funds to implement this fall as part of our 2019 Clean Air Grants program. We successfully completed our first year of implementing the farmer program by by developing projects, 5 tractor replacement projects, 1 each in Santa Maria, Lompoc, and Los Olivos, and 2 in Los Alamos. As part of the administrative agenda today, your board approved us to work with CARB and attain a similar amount of funding to continue participation in year 2 of the farmer program. These funds will be implemented in the fall as part of our 2019 Clean Air Grants program, along with the year 21 Moyer funds. We also successfully completed our first year of the Community Air Protection, or CAP program, with the implementation of a marine engine repower project in Santa Barbara, a tractor replacement project in Maricopa, and 5 tractor replacements in Santa Maria, including 1 that was co-funded with voluntary NOx remediation funds. And I'll talk about that in a second. We're also funding Santa Barbara County's first electric school bus project at the Santa Maria High School District by replacing a 1993 diesel school bus. The new Green Power electric school bus in that bottom right corner should arrive by the end of the calendar year, and we plan to publicize its arrival. We're currently working with CARB to obtain the second year of funding for the CAP program. We plan to bring this item to your board for consideration at the June board meeting. For year 2, we're expecting to receive double the project and implementation funds than we received in year 1. We plan to implement these funds as part of our 2019 Clean Air Grants program, along with the year 21 Moyer funds and the year 2 farmer funds. CARB is in the process of modifying their 2019 guidelines for the CAP program. One item proposed for funding is the reduction of indoor air pollution at schools. So we plan to research this and reach out to schools this fiscal year. Here's a map of the county with the areas designated as low-income communities in blue. As Supervisor Adam alluded to, I think this is Mama Bear and Baby Bear. The 8 orange stars are the year 1 CAP projects, the 5 tractor replacements and the 1 school bus replacement in Santa Maria, the 1 tractor replacement in Maricopa on the far right, and a marine engine repower in Santa Barbara at the bottom. We will post detailed information on these 8 projects later this month and on our Community Air Protection webpage. Anybody else see anything else? This fiscal year, we received one-time funds from CARB's voluntary NOx remediation measures program. The funds were required to be implemented with a project that was highly cost-effective, specifically for NOx emissions. We chose a tractor replacement project in Santa Maria. Since it was in a low-income community also, we were able to co-fund this project with CAP funds. For 18 years, we've helped county school districts comply with state fleet requirements and reduce exposure of toxic diesel exhaust to thousands of students with 35 school bus replacement projects and 33 school bus retrofit projects. This fiscal year, we replaced Orchid Union School District's 1990 diesel school bus with a 2019 diesel school bus. And next fiscal year, we have $300,000 budgeted and plan to continue helping school districts clean up their bus fleets. Old Car Buyback is our oldest incentive program and has helped over 7,300 vehicle owners throughout the county and continues to have steady participation. The program is specifically designed to accelerate the retirement of high-polluting cars, and after 20 years of operation, we average 1 car purchased every day. Back in January this year, we began to scrap model year 1995 and older vehicles and have seen the participation increase. And based on this increase, we budgeted $700,000 for next fiscal year. Our EV program is now in its 8th year, and we've executed 17 grant projects to help purchase and install 33 publicly accessible charging stations in the county. 27 are level 2 chargers and 6 are level 3 chargers. The pie chart shows the percentage of where these 17 EV projects are located. This fiscal year, we've committed about half of our program budget on 5 projects. We funded the purchase and installation of a level 2 EV charging station at both the county campus on Foster Road in Santa Maria and the county campus on Cali Real. We're also executing grant agreements to fund the installation of 6 level 2 charging stations for the city of Santa Barbara. These will be 2 charging stations located at 3 different downtown parking lots owned by the city. We have $100,000 budgeted for next fiscal year that can be used by public entities and multi-unit dwellings. We're researching program improvements and will return to the board for approval if we decide to make any changes to the EV program. The first year of our wood smoke reduction program was highly successful. We were able to commit all of our voucher funds to 61 projects and also establish a waiting list. 44 of the 61 projects have been completed, and the pie chart shows the distribution of where these 61 vouchers are located. CARB is currently revising the program guidelines and will determine the year 2 funding allocations in the near future. We put $250,000 in next fiscal year's budget as a placeholder. However, the state budget for the program looks to have shrunk 40% from last year, from $5 million to $3 million, so it's possible that we may receive a smaller allotment than $250,000. We plan to return to the board in August for approval of the year 2 wood smoke reduction funds. This table summarizes all the grant incentive programs that we plan to implement next fiscal year. This is similar to Table 3 on page 8 of your board letter. I did want to point out 2 minor errors that I made on Table 3 of the board letter that I have corrected on this slide. Full disclosure. First, the program budget for the lower emission school bus / old car buyback row, that should be written as $1,062,500, not $1,062,250 as it is in on your board letter. The second error is both the EV charging station program budget and the project budget should be $100,000, not $135,000, which is on your board letter. This slide also has the correct total funds at the bottom, which are different on your board letter. So I apologize for that. In conclusion, our Clean Air Grant and incentive programs provide substantial value by cost-effectively reducing emissions, especially for mobile sources, and provide financial assistance to county residents, businesses, public entities, and to improve the air that all of us breathe. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Here's my contact info.
Are there any questions? Director Patino, any from you in North County?
Nothing from here.
Your presentation was so thorough. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
That's good. So it's just receiving, we don't need to, okay, very good. Thank you so much. We'll close that item. And the next one is our proposed budget for 1920.
Oh, on the other side, so I can see the slides. I'm going to move on the other side of the table so it's easier to watch the slides when I'm co-presenting.
Please arrange yourselves appropriately, yeah.
All right, thank you. Today we are holding, whoa, I can't see anything down here. Jeez, it's so dramatic. Okay, well, I'll stand tall. Today we are holding one of 2 board hearings on the Air District budget, proposed budget for fiscal year 1920. We have tentatively set our budget adoption date for June 20th, and that meeting will take place in Santa Maria. Our proposed budget was published on April 7th on our website. It was also published in the news press along with the Santa Maria Times and Lompoc Record. It was emailed to individuals, once again, that have subscribed to our e-notification system, and postcards were mailed out. 761 postcards were mailed out to all of the permitted sources. On April 16th, we held a public workshop at the APCD office, and to date, we have not received any comment on our proposed budget. Today's presentation, Ms. Aguilar, Manager of Administrative Division, and I will be presenting. Tina is the critical lead for budget, all things budget for the district, not only for the development of this proposed budget before you, but the oversight throughout the year to ensure that we are on line to meet the projections, both the revenue side and keeping our expenditures down. We have a total of 18 slides, and if possible, if we could hold comments to the end and have questions and comments at the end of the presentation, that would be helpful. If it's not possible, we understand as well.
Thank you.
All right, here's a quick snapshot of our proposed budget. It's $12.5 million. And that's the total. Like we did last fiscal year, we wanted to split out the total proposed budget from what we have, what we consider our operating budget. We have a significant amount of money, as you just heard from Jim's presentation, that's related to pass-through funds. Those are grant funds that are legislatively defined how they can be allocated. So it goes beyond our board's authority to say, you know, we could take those monies and use it for operation. We can't when it comes from the pass-through funds. What falls within our authority is the $8.1 million that we have. And you could see here that we had an increase in our operating budget, 3.3% increase. I think what's very notable here about our budget, pass-through is now 35% of our entire budget. And it increased 21% the amount of pass-through funds that we have this year over the current budget that we have now. So when we pull our budget together, the first thing we do is we look at all the revenue that we have coming in. We tally all that up, and then we make sure that our expenditures are well in line to stay within that amount to present to you a balanced budget. We also, as we did last year with our reorganization, we also take time to look out on the horizon and see how things are changing with revenue streams, and we talk a little bit more about that at the next slide. We did see our staffing is now at 36 full-time equivalent, and this is a reduction as was defined in our reorganization plan. And it's been working very well for us as far as making sure that our mission, our mandates, and all of our new responsibilities that relate to the Community Air Protection Program are fully met. One thing I want to note, and it was included in the budget message, is the district's fund balance is $5.8 million. And of that, $1.5 million is set aside by our board as strategic reserve to be used if a fiscal emergency was to occur. So I alluded to this briefly on the long-range budget forecast. This was something we were able to do last year, and we made the commitment to continue casting the net out 5 years to see how the trends are progressing. And with line 901 down, and the associated shutdown of some of the oil and gas activity, that has a direct impact to our revenue stream. We see not only line 01's not up, but we also know now that Veneco, Platform Holly is going through the decommissioning. We've received word from Point Arguello, who's going through the decommissioning of their associated 3 platforms. This work takes a long time. It's not going to be something that's immediate, but it's something that we're aware of and we're making sure we're planning for when those revenue sources are completely removed from our budget. 617, AB 617, you're going to hear us, well, you have heard us talk a lot about this legislation. Not only does it have a huge increase in the amount of grant programs, but it also has an impact to the way we do our emissions inventory, our BART rural development. So that had a significant impact on the way we structure our agency. With the reorganization, one of the key benefits that we were able to incorporate with the reorganization is having air quality specialists now serving 3 different functions. They do compliance, they do monitoring, they do planning. So it's an opportunity for us to share those responsibilities across the division lines to ensure that we have necessary resources when the job presents itself. So while our number of staff have actually decreased, our pension system cost and contributions continue to increase. And even with a decreased number of staff, we've seen an increase in our pension cost. The recruitment. Geez, I think administrative division's been extremely busy this last year. We had 7 recruitments to date that were completed in this last fiscal year. With the analysis that we did, with the equity analysis we did last year, we're hopeful that we have built a structure that enables recruitment of highly qualified staff, but also retention of those staff. So we build on that knowledge and can continue operating in a more efficient manner as we continue with our workload. So the key factors that are affecting this year's budget, I mentioned, and you heard from Jim, the increase of pass-through funds. The state legislature definitely values the benefit that these voluntary emission reductions can provide to the state in total. We are considered a medium-sized district, so we don't get the same amount of cash that is going to large districts like San Joaquin Valley, South Coast Air Basin, or even the Bay Area. Those areas, they're larger in number, they have more individuals that are contributing, but they also have much worse air quality, and because of that, they secure more of the statewide percent of grant funding coming our way. But being a board member on CAPCOA, it has really enabled me to raise my hand regularly and ensure we get as much of those funds as possible and able to build the case. And you saw that in Jim's presentation with the increase of funds coming from 617. We were provided a relatively small percent, and we were able, through the CAPCOA discussions, able to create justification for CARB to give us the amount of money that represents our population base that we serve. So that was a significant help for us. Fee revenues. The district has not proposed an increase to our fee rule, Rule 201, since 1991. However, we do have the CPI adjustment built in, and that was at 3.6% for this proposed budget. And I mentioned the increase of the pension system. It was a 15% increase in the proposed budget versus our current year, and that's equivalent to $225,000. On the expenditure side, we have 3 large projects that we included in this year's budget. One was the continued use of the agency's logo and the revamping of our website to increase and expand agency awareness to all the communities, all the individuals that we serve. And a lot of this will also include outreach to Spanish-speaking communities. Developing an emergency response plan for natural disasters. This is something that's actually being discussed right now in the legislature. Sac Metro AQMD is behind a pilot project right now for the development of an emergency response plan. With all the emergency response that we have experienced here in Santa Barbara County, we have developed a lot of best practices, but we need to incorporate those into an emergency plan that we use internally for ourselves, but we also share those with the other agencies that we work with and the schools, for example, on outdoor activity recommendations or even indoor filtration when and if the next wildfire impacts our area. And we've heard about the 2 CARB air monitoring stations, making sure within this year that we evaluate the equipment that's included at those stations, we bring it up to the level of all of the other monitoring stations that we manage, and then we resume ownership of both the Santa Maria and Santa Barbara station. So now I'm going to walk through 4 slides that discuss the major accomplishments for this current fiscal year. I'll start off with the administrative division, the budget. As I mentioned, Tina and her staff have been doing an excellent job, not only developing the proposed budget that's before you today, but also monitoring and tracking how we're doing with our current budget. And with that, it also talks about the financial audit. We bring our CAFR to your board earlier this year. I think it's usually January, and there were no audit findings in that again. So I applaud Tina and her division for doing an excellent job on our budget tracking process. But the big new project as it relates to fiscal was changing over from our existing software to Tyler technology. And we had to do a lot of research before we went forward with Tyler, and your jurisdictions were actually very helpful. There's some cities that actually have been using Tyler for some time, and Tina was able to meet with your staff and get a better understanding of how well it's worked for you. And it was a very intensive effort for us to migrate over. Tyler was excellent, so if your agency has not yet migrated, I would recommend that. They even have a user group here in the county for those who use this software. But it was successfully migrated over, and following up on that, Tina and her staff have been able to train all the staff who are interfacing with this technology so we can all efficiently use this system. And efficiency, that's one of the big things that Tyler technology provided us, and it's kind of it is a theme that you'll see throughout all the different divisions. All of our job specs, we talk about the reorganization that we went through. Well, with that was a requirement to update our job specifications. And you've seen almost all of those. We have two. The last two are now complete and getting prepped for your June board meeting. So all of our job specifications will be updated within this fiscal year. Negotiations. We were able to negotiate with the 3 unions, new MOUs with all of those bargaining units. Sarah did an excellent job working with our consultant in negotiating on the district's behalf, and with that, it resulted in a 2-year agreement to have a COLA for this existing year and also a 3% increase that takes effect in July. And since I've been here, we haven't been able to negotiate a multi-year agreement, and that really helps. It's a benefit when you go forward with the planning for the current budget that we're in now. We're actually able to incorporate that into the budget. On the public information side, this is a recent change as well with the reorganization. We brought Liz Hoffman, our PIO, into the administrative division. She sits on my management team. She's able to sit there and serve all of the divisions and get a better understanding of what our overall goals are and to ensure that we are thinking about the communication and the impacts those communications might have. 29 press releases, 15 media interviews, and significant steps to increase our brand awareness with our logo, and currently now we're working with a website redesign. Moving into engineering, nearly 600 permit actions were taken this fiscal year. They've been transitioning to paperless electronic system, and this is also on the efficiency measure. We did the Aegis. We had 800 boxes that we had stored into the Aegis building, and that was part of the strategy that your board approved to get out of our lease of the Aegis building. It's a small building next door to our office on Turnpike. We were able last fiscal year to electronically scan all 800 pages. Well, engineering division took it one step further within this fiscal year. They actually archived all of their active files now. And it's a little scary when you go from paper files that you're active with, scanning those, sending them away, and then coming back to make sure that they're organized in a way that you can easily retrieve those. But once it's in place, it definitely makes all of our systems much more effective. Continuing on with the efficiency mode, automating our reporting process back to CARB on the oil and gas regulation. We were able to issue our permit, our operating permit with Central Coast Wine Services, and this was able to define achieved in practice best available control technology for fermentation emission control systems. This is notable on the statewide level, and it's actually gathered a lot of attention from the Wine Institute and other areas of California. And then lastly here on this slide, engineering staff have been providing a lot of technical analysis related to the air quality health risk and ambient standard review of the, there's 3 oil and gas projects that are being evaluated currently in Cat Canyon, but it's not limited just with those 3. You also have the interim trucking project that's being considered and some of the pipeline evaluation as well. So there's been a lot of effort on analysis of the air quality impacts from those projects coming from the engineering division. Compliance is the third division we'll be discussing. The top item relates to a very intense interagency effort. It took us, I think, about a year and a half to get the two agencies to understand what we needed to make open burn program more effective, and we were able to launch those improvements with County Fire this year. And so far, things have been working well. It's just nice actually to work with County Fire and go arm in arm to Fire Safe Council and other communication groups and let them know why we're doing the changes and how it will benefit not only from a fire point of view, but also improved air quality. Over 550 inspections were conducted at our permitted facilities, 359 air pollution complaints, and I just want to bring to your attention, okay, 359, that is a lot, but complaints are so complicated, and it's such a time-consuming endeavor for us. It seems very rarely a complaint comes in that's solved just like that. They tend to continue and form a life of their own. The variance process is continuing. We administered 12 variance petitions. The majority of those petitions are still associated with the shutdown of the All-American Pipeline, Line 901. So that's why you're seeing so many there. And very proud to announce that we've eliminated the backlog for our NOV mutual settlement program. That took a lot of time and resources just to get that backlog complete. And then the last division I'll be highlighting is planning. I don't think I need to do much on grants. I think Jim covered that very well, so well that we didn't have any questions. Awesome. Community programs. The items that we have highlighted here are Clean Air Ambassador Program. We're working here with the UC Santa Barbara students, and we're actually developing a curriculum to go out to elementary schools countywide. So we've developed this program. It's a new program for us, and they're already out making visits to classrooms that are interested in using this resource. We talk a lot at your board related to low-cost air quality sensors. We've been able to deploy those. With your approval we highlighted the purple air monitors. With your approval, we are now working at community facilities, primarily schools throughout the community, to get those installed. And we would like to come back to your board in the October timeframe to discuss how this program's been working, not only at the community outlets like the schools, but also we're putting the purple air sensors or the low-cost sensors at our ambient air monitoring stations, and we want to show you how well the low-cost sensors are working compared to a federal reference method. So we have that slotted for the October timeframe to bring that back to your board. And on the air monitoring side, we have secured approval from EPA and CARB to move forward with the changes to our air monitoring network, and we're working now to streamline our operations so we can take over both the Santa Maria and Santa Barbara station. So that wraps up the first part of my presentation. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Tina, who will walk us through the specific details of the proposed budget.
Okay, good afternoon. The district's total budget continues to increase due to increased grant funds being received from the state for our grant programs. The total district budget increased by $1.4 million. Included in this is a $1.1 million increase in pass-through grant funds. That means the district's operating revenue increased by $262,000, or right around 3%. The district is expecting approximately the same level of fees and operating revenue as in previous years. There are some revenue streams decreasing slightly, while others increase slightly, but the changes are very minimal, to the tune of $816. Being a numbers person, having such a small variance year to year is exciting stuff for me. I believe consistency is the theme in this year's budget. These tables illustrate the district's total budget versus its operating budget. The grant revenue next year makes up approximately 35.1%, or as Aaron mentioned, $4.4 million of the district's total revenue, all of which is slated for grant programs as pass-through funds. Our operating revenue only increased by $816, which can be seen here in the third table, first row. But the overall operating budget increased by $262,000 due to an increase in the amount of grant admin funds we'll be receiving to run these grant programs, and also the use of fund balance. The fund balance components that are included in the fiscal year 1920 are included in 1920 that make up the increase from our normal uses is $100,000 for our Clean Air Fund program and $139,000 for our monitoring program to allow the district to take ownership of 2 carb monitoring sites and purchase additional equipment to bring those stations up to the district's normal operating specifications. Here's the operating revenue plan broken out by category. As you can see, licenses and permits, which is the dark blue piece, continues to be the largest chunk of the district's revenue at 37%. Followed in a close second by federal, state, and other government revenues in green at 31%. Over the past 2 years, these 2 pieces of the pie have actually slowly become closer and closer to be the same size. So now on to expenditures. Salaries and benefits are the district's largest expenditure, and those costs increased by 8.3% or $464,000. Half of that increase is due to pension costs. The district's contribution to the pension system has increased substantially from the previous fiscal year. Although the number of full-time district staff have decreased, the pension costs have continued to increase. The overall increase for pension costs for the district is 15% in the upcoming fiscal year, resulting in an additional expenditure of approximately $225,000. The district was notified last fiscal year that contributions will increase annually for the next 5 years. The fiscal year 1920 proposed budget includes the increase for the second year of that 5-year window. The other half of the increase can be attributed to cost of living adjustments that were negotiated in fiscal year 1819. Staff will be receiving a 3% cost of living adjustment scheduled to take effect on July 1st. Services and supplies jump substantially for pass-through activity, but when you look at S&S closer, it actually decreased $164,000 on the operating side. All other categories remain pretty consistent from prior years. As I said a few slides ago, the district wanted to show what the operating budget was versus monies used for grant programs. These tables illustrate the operating and pass-through for expenditures. As Aaron has already mentioned, the district plans to pay out $4.4 million for grant programs and pass-through funds next year. This is a pretty substantial increase of 35.1% or $1.1 million from 1819. So here's another pie chart, this time breaking down the district's operating expenditures. The largest expenditure within our operating budget is our people. Salaries and benefits is almost 75%. Of that $6 million expense, approximately $1.65 million can be attributed to retirement costs. And as we've already talked about, pension costs are a large concern over the next few years. So we'll continue to watch these costs and make adjustments as needed with each budget cycle. So continuing with the consistency theme, as in previous years, a key measure of the district's fiscal health is the size of the fund balance relative to the total annual budget. With a projected total fund balance of $5.8 million, or 72% of the total operating budget, the district would be able to operate for approximately 7 to 8 months using these reserves. We feel that the fund balances continue to be adequate and provide the district with the cushion that is necessary in case of an emergency. On this slide, you can see the fund balance categories and the associated amounts within each category. I will now turn it back over to Erin so she can discuss the district's goals and objectives for fiscal year 1920.
And a lot of these I think I've highlighted as we went through the achievements of our current year. In addition to maintaining our core responsibilities as it relates to our permit program, compliance program, planning, and our everyday function of the administrative division, we identified some key goals for this coming fiscal year. Efficiency will continue to remain at the top of our concern. Since we are at 36 employees and workload keeps changing and increasing, you've heard how grants increase and other responsibilities increase, we need to continue figuring out how to do things smarter tomorrow than we have done today. So we want to automate our permit application process. We've invested a lot of time into our database system, not only on the compliance front, but also in the permitting and engineering side. We want to automate those for ourselves as well as for the sources in the community. We want to provide input potential for facility information for their annual emissions inventory that they provide to us, and also an online complaint system. We want to expand the use of our agency communication tools, whether it's our logo in our social media, our website. We're reorganizing the user friendliness of our website, trying to make it easier for folks to find exactly what they're looking for. But we also want folks to think about the Air District and realize we're here as a resource before a wildfire hits. That's when we are at the top of mind. But I want to make sure that folks understand who we are and what our responsibilities are in advance of a natural disaster. We're going to complete the transfer of ownership for the 2 stations that the California Air Resources Board is very eager to get rid of. So making sure that we have the Santa Barbara and Santa Maria air monitoring station up to snuff to the same level that we have all of our other monitoring stations, and implement the new grant funding. We've talked a number of times in this presentation about the $4.4 million. One thing I just want to highlight about the grant program, we received this funding and it provides us a couple years to spend it. But our goal is to streamline that process as well, to work with all of the eligible project proponents in the community, make sure that they're aware that the funding is available and they're aware of what type of information that we're requesting, that we get their applications in and we process those in a way that can be allocated with a contract but also spent in this fiscal year if possible. So we don't have the carry forward year after year with those funds. And then the last one, I already mentioned this one, but the development of an air quality emergency response plan is going to be critical for us moving forward. And that wraps up our budget presentation. If you have any comments or questions, we are ready for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I did have a question. So your slide 7 talked about eliminated the NOV mutual settlement backlog. Can you just explain what that is for those of us who don't know?
We have a mutual settlement program. When we have a violation that occurs, when our inspectors go out and they see a violation of a permit condition, for example, we write a violation, a notice of violation. We wait for that violation to come into compliance. Once it's in compliance, we have a 3-year window to resolve that, to settle that. So you have a violation, so we go through a negotiation as far as the penalty fee for that violation, and then once we have agreement on the settlement amount, we work forward to ensure that that's been resolved and provided back to the district within that 3-year window. You get this report every board meeting, our NOV report, so you see when they're issued and then you also see when they're settled. And our goal, we had a backlog, and I can't recall exactly how large it was. It was significant in size, and we provided a presentation to your board probably about 2 years ago, I think now, identifying our number of violations that had not yet been settled. So we committed in our current fiscal year that we're working off of right now to eliminate that backlog. So I can't recall, Caitlin, you're going to have to help me here. I can't recall the specific date that we defined as our backlog. I think it was January of, was it? She's going to fill in the blank.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Murillo, or Chair Murillo, and members of the board. My name is Caitlin McNally, and I'm the manager of the compliance division at the Air Pollution Control District. And to answer your question, what Aaron was referring to, the backlog was defined as violations issued before January 1st, 2018. So our goal was to settle and close all of those violations.
Okay. So collecting some of that?
Yes, so it would include, if an amount was agreed to for the penalty, collecting that payment for that.
Okay, thank you. Director Williams, is that you, or was it Mr. Kasdan? Oh,
that was me.
Director Kasdan.
Thank you. Just a few questions. To clarify pass-through, I think of pass-throughs as where you have no control over the use of the funds, that it just goes from one administrative entity puts it through another, and it just gets distributed directly without any input from the that first agency. Is that how it works, or who do you pass these grant monies to?
The grant funds are outlined, the requirements for those are typically outlined by guidelines approved by CARB. And that was based on legislation that's been approved. After the guidelines are established, we receive the funds, and then we award those grant funds out to project proponents that meet the criteria of the different guidelines. Carl Moyer, for example, focuses on heavy-duty diesel equipment. So we have different categories that we can award those funds to.
I don't think I would, personally, I don't think I would refer to that as a pass-through. You're the administrator of the grant, but you have some authority in decision-making or in allocation. I think of a pass-through as if then you allocated the money to the city of Goleta, for example, and it just passed through, but you had no role in how it was used.
I guess
not to belabor it or anything, but I don't think of that as a pass-through.
Okay, maybe I could get your assistance then on how best to characterize these funds. What I was trying to highlight by separating out the total budget versus the operating budget, as a board, we can't take the grant funding and put that towards our operations or a special project or something that falls outside of the guidelines as defined by the state. So I was trying to delineate between that, what we have more control over, versus what is prescriptive at the legislative level.
No, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, I'm sure all the folks with city backgrounds, they'll have special funds in which the funds are dedicated for facilities or dedicated for, one thing or another, but it's not a pass-through, even though the use of the money is restricted for certain activities or certain purposes. I was just curious, but it's not that was just a point of clarification. How much would you say goes to the you highlighted 4 different divisions? Do you have can you indicate more or less how much each of them received? Was that?
Tina's going to help us here.
Just to get a sense of the proportions, how you guys are built.
Sure. So this slide actually represents that. I have it as a backup slide that I could definitely share if we don't print those. I don't believe we do. So I'm more than willing to email this to you, but this is the breakout of our 4 divisions. Obviously, in an administrative division, that includes all the overhead costs, so rent and utilities, things of that nature. And then in planning, it is so large because of those monies that flow through that are restricted, are coded to that division.
Is that right? The grants, the allocation of the grants is in the planning division?
Yes.
Oh. Okay. And compliance. So the 2 that are really interfacing with the public are compliance and planning? Is that, or also engineering, I guess?
As far as the public, it depends which audience of the public you're referring to. Engineering, they primarily interface with the sources that we have permits with. Compliance interfaces with those sources as well as far as inspections, but they also deal with public complaints. Admin, I think that's a majority internal, except for our public information officer that's very public-facing, interfacing with the media and a lot of various inquiries that come in. And then on the planning side, we have community programs there, we have the grants, and those are typically not regulated sources. On the CEQA review, so you have the land use agencies and the project proponents that go through our planning division and our school programs.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any questions over here? Director Patino?
None from here.
Thanks. It looks like we're satisfied.
Great.
And grateful for all your hard work. And did we need to take a vote to set the hearing for June? or Ms. Clerk?
Yes, we
Okay.
will need to take a vote.
So the motion would be to,
This would be to consider the fiscal year 2019 to 20 proposed budget as follows. A, receive the proposed budget for fiscal year 2019-20, hold a public hearing to accept public comments and provide direction to staff regarding changes desired by the board, and C, schedule a budget adoption hearing for June 20th, 2019.
motion, please? Okay, so that was Sierra and Kasdan, and we'll take a roll call vote if there's no other discussion. Thank you, ma'am. Any other discussion, Ms. Arlen Janae?
I just wanted to make sure there was no public comment.
Oh, I see someone out there, perhaps. Did you have a comment on our budget, sir?
I don't, so this may be the wrong moment.
Oh, okay. We'll get back to you then. Thanks. So no public comment on this particular item.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take the vote. Director Mosby? Aye. Patino?
Aye.
Toussaint? Williams? Hart? Hartman? Adam? Sierra? Clark? Kasdan? And Chair Murillo?
Aye. That was unanimous, I think.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Thanks again, Ms. Aguilar, for your hard work. So that moves us to announcements. Ms. Hunt, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure, we just have a couple announcements. This meeting will be rebroadcast on Sunday, May 19th at 5 o'clock on County of Santa Barbara TV Channel 20. And then also immediately following this meeting, we will have a hearing board nominating committee. This is Directors Williams, Hartman, Adam, and Patino.
Okay.
That's it.
So those folks don't go away. Are there any, is it announcements from us? No. Okay. So, sir, you missed the general public comment at the beginning of the meeting, but as I'm chair, I will stick around and hear what you have to say one-on-one, if you like. Okay. So we'll close the meeting. Meeting adjourned.